Jeff Harding here with Stress Be Gone with PSTEC. We're in the third session, the final session of this webinar series with Tim Phizackerley, the creator and founder of PSTEC, and myself, Jeff Harding, Master Practitioner with PSTEC. We entitled this originally Eliminate Holiday Stress with PSTEC, but also it can be used for anything, any kind of stressful issues, situations, etc. So, although the holidays are over, and we've been, probably past the holidays now for at least a week or two, that doesn't mean that the work necessarily is over. There's some great opportunities, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is what to do if you still have some stress, if you still have some issues. So we're going to go over that today, and I think you're really going to find this really helpful, because even if, let's say, you had a little bit better, less stress than usual in the holidays, but you still had some, we're going to talk about that as well, because in my view, and when I work with people individually, a lot of times if they were dealing with stress at a 10 and they're down to a 5 or even a 6, it's like a new world. And it's interesting because quite often I'll work with people and they'll be at a 10, and then I'll ask them, okay, 0 to 10, where are you now after a specific click track? And they'll say, well, it's good. It's really good. And I said, okay, 0 to 10 though. No, it's good. Well, 0 to 10, they said it's a 5. So it went from a 10 to a 5, and that's good enough. But, and this is just my opinion, even if you're at a 2, 3, it's definitely better and you're on the right road, but why not go for a 0 to 1, or 0, even better, right? So that's what we're going to talk about, some of these aspects here. All right, so again, Jeff here, and I welcome Tim. Tim, welcome here to our final installment. Are you looking forward to this?
Yeah, I am. And can I just say something, Jeff?
You can say anything.
I was just going to say, this is the last chance to ask questions.
Yeah.
If anybody's got them, they need to type them in, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that's really important, because when you go through the steps, like in session 1, session 2, and you actually experience it and go through it, I know a lot of times people come up and go, yeah, what about this, though? So we're going to go over that today. Session 3 here is called Putting Stress Behind You. And another little lyric, again from the same tune by Van Morrison: when you don't need an answer, there'll be days like this. When you don't need a chancer, there'll be days like this. When all parts of the puzzle start to look like they fit, then I must remember there'll be days like this. And I know as you all go through session 1, session 2, and now session 3, I have a feeling, and that's what our hope here is that this puzzle will start to fit together, and those pieces will. And if you do persist, they will, because the more that you use the PSTEC tools, the more your subconscious becomes acclimated to using them, even sometimes offline, if you will. When you're not thinking about using them, some of those same aspects and concepts and whatnot are still running and helping you. So a lot of these things will fit in as time goes on and the more that you use them. All right. So initially, we get through the holidays, because we kind of target this originally for the holidays, and you might think, well, the holidays are over. Let's just forget about the stress. Okay, I got through the holidays. I'm fine. Now let me move on. And okay, if you did survive it, and maybe it even was a little bit better, a lot of people think, well, I can breathe a sigh of relief and just forget about it till next year. But there's a better choice for you here, an important choice, and it's an opportunity that's just begging for your attention. Because when you take advantage of the opportunity we're going to talk about today, you'll make strides on this path to personal freedom like you've never done before. The old phrase, take it to the next level. So that's what we're talking about today, is to be able to not just put it behind you necessarily, but to grab the opportunity of your experiences that you had here over the holidays. And there's a lot that you can do with that. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yeah, it certainly does. And I've got nothing to add at the moment.
This is going to go a lot quicker than we said, I think, actually. Okay. So the first thought here is to review your experience that you had. So it could be the holidays, like I said, but it could be something else. Let's say you're utilizing these session concepts and practices that we talked about in any stressful situation. It could be something coming up with a speech you have to give, an interview you have to do for work or business or job. Could be you're going out with someone for the first time or the second date. It could be a multitude of things, or something that you have on a regular basis that's stressful. So if you follow the steps and you work with them, it's a good time to review the experience as you go through it. So you went out and you tested this. You tested your PSTEC work to see if you'd still experience stress under the same or similar circumstances. And if some of the stress is still there, now's the time to reassess your stress levels as well as the circumstances and the people involved. So, revisit that, because now it's a memory. If you worked on something, let's say, and let's use the holiday example, you worked on it for the holidays, and now the holidays from 2012 are a memory, and you can utilize that experience, that memory, and we're going to show you how to do that right now. Get it while it's fresh. So it's still fresh in your mind, most likely. Take advantage of that. And just recall the most recent encounter with stress. What were the circumstances? And maybe the stress you anticipated wasn't there. Maybe you anticipated stress with a certain person like Uncle George, but then there was no stress with maybe Uncle George, but you had stress with Aunt Betty or whatever. So another person, or maybe you anticipated stress with a certain family gathering and you didn't have it there, but you did at another maybe holiday party or encounter just one-on-one with an individual. Take whatever stressful situations you had over your, and I call it your testing period, the time when you went out to see, okay, how's this going to work? And just take those most recent memories and bring them up in your mind. Does that make sense, Tim? You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it does, actually. I've got a question for you, Jeff.
Fire away.
Because I'm looking at a slightly different version of the document. I'm looking at the presentation, but I'm also looking at the Word document that you put together.
Yeah.
And on there, you've got a little Jeep picture.
Right.
This joy, enthusiasm, excitement, and peace. And I know we've talked about this privately, sort of not on a webinar, but just between the two of us. And it's something that I've always wanted to ask about, and I've never done it.
Okay.
I wondered where the idea of Jeep came from. Is this something of your creation, or where does Jeep come from? Because that I think really underpins all this, doesn't it? And that's why you put that graphic there, is because if you're going back and revisiting these situations, what you're looking for is whether there was Jeep, joy, enthusiasm, excitement, and peace. And if there wasn't, it's like, well, why not? And what could I have done about it? I get the impression that's really what we're talking about. I mean, I agree, absolutely. Go back and revisit things, sort of do a sort of post-mortem on how the holiday period went and the techniques that we recommended in advance of that, how they've worked for you, and where things work well, make a mental note of it, because it means it's likely to work for you well for other things in the future. But also, if something didn't work as well as could have been expected or hoped for, then it's worth identifying those experiences and just taking a look at them and say, well, is there a reason why that didn't work? Did I do enough of this? Did I follow that? And so forth. But the Jeep thing, I think, is really, really important. And I just wondered if you would expand on that, Jeff.
Sure, and I appreciate that. And I am working on a little more comprehensive explanation of it, if you will. There's simplicity. The reason why it came up, and it was something that came to my mind a few years ago. And in fact, on my wedding band, on the inside, when Beth and I married last year, on the inside of my wedding band it says Jeep. Jeep is an indication when I'm in connection with, and this is my own belief system, if you will, but I'm in connection with my higher self. You could call it your best resources. You could call it your true self. You could call it spirit. You can call it God, whatever you want. But when those emotions come through, it basically means it has an indication that I'm in harmony with my mind in whole, WHOLE. So if I'm feeling Jeep, then I'm in harmony, and I'm, for lack of a better word here, complete, in the moment at least. And now I can move forward with my mind in whole. And when I do that, then I have my greatest resources to bear. And I can ask, like in a situation, let's say, what's the truth here and what do I need to do? Generally, I want to call it, the best resources come forward, and a lot of times the best answers. Maybe not immediately all the time, but a lot of times it does. In my experience, quite often when I had a problem, the answer came, and the answer was, there's nothing to do. In other words, just be there in peace or in joy or whatever. And a lot of these issues, problems, seem to resolve themselves. So that was the motivation for that. Now, when I'm not in Jeep, when I have non-Jeep, and then it could be anger, it could be frustration, sadness, guilt is a big one. Anger and guilt are really big ones because they involve a lot more defense, and then I'm more closed, if you will. At least, again, for most people, and there are exceptions. So when I'm in non-Jeep, then I know that I'm not in harmony and I have an issue. I'm in conflict. My intentions, usually my desires, are in conflict. I need to clear up that conflict, get back into Jeep, which is being in harmony, and then I can move forward with whatever I want to do. So,
sorry, Jeff, can I just interrupt there?
Absolutely.
And that's really, isn't it, why going from a 10 to a 5 is... You're saying, don't be satisfied with a 5.
Right.
Go for a 0, because if somebody's on a 5, they can't possibly be experiencing joy, enthusiasm, excitement, and peace at the same time.
Right.
It's not possible, is it?
Right, because Jeep is a pure thing. All right. The problem is when we say, all right, when a person goes from a 10 to a 5, the contrast is what makes it feel good. In other words, a 5 is a lot better than feeling a 10, but it's still not pure. There's still a conflict. You're not fully in harmony, and that's kind of a pitfall sometimes, where we settle for, well, it's better than where I was, and it definitely is. Again, you're on the right road and on the right track, and it's absolutely wonderful. But then we have to sit quietly a bit and say, okay, am I truly at peace yet, though? Without comparing it to before. And I think it's important because for a couple main reasons. Number one, if I stop at a 5, I was at a 10 and I'm now at a 5, and consciously I'm going, well, I can breathe a little better, feels better. But if I still have, let's say I was working on anger, if I still have anger at a 5 and I stop there, then I'm basically signaling to my subconscious, my partner, if you will, my partner in thought. I'm signaling that, hey, a 5 is okay. Some anger is okay. And not being at peace, total and complete peace, is not that important. It's just important that I get it lower. And so I think it's important to really... You can use that as an indicator. If my Jeep is not, if I'm not down to a 0 and I'm not now into Jeep, then maybe I got a little more work to do. And I think it's really important from those standpoints. And it just makes it a little easier. I know some people have talked about things like muscle testing and all this kind of stuff. just how does it feel? It's a great indicator, and that's one of the most clear ways that the subconscious communicates with us. And so that's why I think it's a great tool.
I was going to say, Jeff, it's a wonderful yardstick by which to judge success. And this is one of the things that you've taught me, is to look for joy, enthusiasm, excitement, and peace. And if I haven't got that, then I know there's a problem.
Yeah.
That was why I wanted to ask about it, because I think it really is important.
No, I appreciate that. On the slides, I actually have Jeep a little later. The other point I wanted to make on this was, now, let's say, using the holiday experience, let's say I had a holiday experience with the family and there was still people fighting, let's say, okay? But I'm at peace with it. See? What's important is your peace with the situation. You're not in control of how other people act and what they do, all right? You can have an effect on them, especially over time. But what's important here, let's say in the holiday example, is let's say the family still went at it. But you're just kind of sitting there observing and watching, sometimes with a little smile on your face because you know that these people are being goofy. This is such a waste of time. And you begin to kind of laugh at it, not laughing at them necessarily. One of my great phrases, Beth loves this. I said, I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing next to you. So what I'm talking about is you can still be amongst the chaos and still be at peace. And what a wonderful state of mind to be in. What a wonderful mind model that says, okay, these guys are in chaos and I got to get out of here. Well, I'm not so sure that's a peaceful place. That's more like avoidance and fear. But if you are with this family people, which you were thrust into when you were born, and it doesn't mean you do have to sit with coffee with them if they are, let's call it destructive or attacking. But if they are arguing amongst themselves and you can sit there peacefully, what a wonderful gauge of how you're doing internally and within. And who knows, maybe you will be guided to still hang around there and be a peaceful influence on them. You never know what could happen. So, again, the internal Jeep and how you feel, I think, is a great, one of the great indicators of how things are, what your results are. How are your results? That's what this is about.
Okay. Are we on to the next one then, Jeff?
So we like to use accelerators a lot, right, Tim?
Yeah.
In a lot of situations.
Yeah. Not excessively.
True.
But to make sure that they're mixed in on a regular basis, yes.
Yeah. I call it an essential, I think. And so that's why we're going to recommend it here, although, if you can't for some reason or feel you can't, the click tracks are still good. But the number one point is focus on that most recent stressful event, whatever it was. Now, it could be, again, the original one that you were focusing on and shooting for. Again, maybe that one's fine. You have Jeep there, but you had another stressful kind of situation you didn't anticipate. Okay, that's okay. There's just another aspect, something going on there, and it's just another opportunity to, I want to say, shoot for being an absolute imperturbable person here. And I know there's resistance by a lot of people because there's a real attachment to be part of the drama. If everybody's going at it, there's just something in us that wants to be part of that drama and all that stuff going on. But I recommend you look at becoming imperturbable. And when you're around really growth-oriented people and people that want to grow and people that want to enjoy life, you're going to become a bit of a icon in a way. Somewhere where they look at you and they go, how do you do this? And there's a respect there for that and honoring. And again, you can have a great influence on people. So,
actually, Jeff,
go ahead.
This would be a really good time. You can talk about being imperturbable. Imperturbable. One of the things that we talked about on, I can't remember whether it was the first or the second of the webinars, was the stress in the moment. which was something that I'd been thinking about for a very, very long time. And it took me ages to figure out exactly how to put that together. If we've got anybody listening who's been using stress in the moment, it would be a good time for us to get to elicit some feedback about how it's worked for them with things that were unexpected. Because as you know, I've had absolutely spectacular results with it. I've talked to a few people who have as well. But it would be, while we've got people on, we can all communicate. If anybody's got anything interesting to say about that, it would be nice to know while we're on.
Yeah, if anybody does, just type it in there or raise your hand, and we can unmute you. Go ahead. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, because the whole idea with that is to allow you to be imperturbable, because it's there to deal with the unexpected.
Exactly.
So that it kicks in, and also to give you a tool that you can use at any time, irrespective of whether you've got access to MP3 players, whatever. So it would be great if we could get some observations on that. If anybody out there, listen to it.
Okay, very good. Yeah, go ahead and type it in. We'll catch you here pretty soon here in the webinar. With these past events that come up and you still have some feeling on them, some non-Jeep feeling, try hard as you can to feel the stress and focus on that most recent stressful memory and run one of the accelerator tapping tracks. And again, if you don't have the accelerators, you can use the basic click track. But again, the accelerators are really worth the investment, not only in helping to allow your subconscious to present to you more memories, feelings, and whatnot that need to be addressed, released, let go, but it also enhances the use of the other tracks. True? Correct, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, they've got various different functions, but yes, that's essentially correct. I mean, one of the things that they are designed to do, which the normal click tracks and the EEFs do to a certain extent, but deliberately so, and much more so with the accelerators, is they're designed to help people access causal memories which may have been deeply buried, which make them feel stressed or anxious or whatever in certain situations. And I was talking to somebody only yesterday who'd been working with somebody who'd had years and years and years of problems, and the first time they used the accelerators, they were instantly transported back to a time when they were only about 18 months old, and something happened. They were able to clear it, and the result was spectacular. But what I found really, really interesting about that, which shouldn't really surprise me anymore, because I've come across it before, but it still does, is that experiences which are so distant and which are completely outside of conscious awareness can resonate throughout a person's entire life. And that's one of the reasons why I created the accelerators, is because nothing's absolutely cast iron when it comes to therapy. But as far as possible, I try to produce things which are as close to 100% reliable as I've been able to achieve. If you can access things like that, if they're there, the results can be spectacular. And that's really why I created them, because these things do resonate throughout somebody's entire life. And so if we go back to the sort of things that happened over the holiday season, if there was something which, for whatever reason, seemed to be particularly affecting, in a negative way, then it's likely to relate to former experience in some way. And that's one of the beauties of using the accelerators on a memory like that, because it's designed to connect you to, even if it doesn't happen consciously, to connect you to experiences, memories, stuff that's there from long ago perhaps, which is related to that. So that's really why they're important. I mean, there's other reasons. I mean, they're packed with suggestions to make all of the other tracks more effective, including things like positive empowered and stuff that would seem to be completely unconnected with sort of click track type things. They are multiple, but it's really, really important to use them if you have some.
Okay. Now, adding on to partly what Tim was just saying there, when you do this using the accelerators, other memories may come up, as he said. And, as you click on that most recent stressful situation, these other memories may come up. They come up because they're important. And what I mean by important is they're important contributors to the feeling that I should feel stressful under these situations. There's something to worry about. And so, in a sense, these memories that your subconscious is presenting to you, it's like presenting to you on a silver platter. It's basically giving it to you. So you need to click track those as well. And this is where it really becomes important to do what I call the two-step, which is basically get quiet and listen. After you run the click or the accelerator track, let's say on the most recent stressful memory, sit quietly, reassess your feelings. How are the feelings? And is anything else coming up? Is anything else bubbling up to the surface? And it will. And the most poignant, the most important ones, these foundational ones, I guess you could call it too, are the ones that come up. It could be more than one, could just be one. Maybe none come up. That's okay. But if they do come up, grab the opportunity again and click track that one as well until they're down to 0-1. In Click Tracks Made Simple, I gave the example. It was a great example of somebody that I was working with, and a clown face appeared in their vision, in their mind. And she had no clue where that vision came from. She said, I've never seen this clown face in my life before. And that could be true. Either she's forgotten about it, or it could be something the subconscious just kind of manufactured. And that's fine. So click track on the fear of that image, and then went back to the original one. The original one went down too. So my perspective is, whatever bubbles up from the subconscious, go ahead and click track it. Don't ask questions. Don't evaluate it. Don't judge it. Don't deem it inappropriate. But just consider it a gift and go ahead and click track those other things that come up. Anything to add to that?
That's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really important, what you were saying about, not judging it, not evaluating it. The reason it's important not to do that is because the subconscious doesn't work in a logical way. It's wired up differently from the way we work consciously. So trying to consciously analyze things is sometimes counterproductive.
Right.
It's just best to do what you've just said, which is to say, okay, this is connected in some way, I'll just clear it. And don't necessarily go looking for reasons, because the reasons aren't necessarily going to make any sense to the conscious mind. But that doesn't mean that they're not important, because they almost certainly are.
Exactly. And this clown-faced example, I mean, the comment by the person was, oh, it's not relevant. And logically it wasn't, but it was. It was very relevant. Okay. So that's why this is important to deal with utilizing the accelerators. One of the reasons, this is one of the functions that it really helps bring these things up that are necessary to let go. So let them go. All right.
Yeah, there's something else to add here,
Go ahead.
as well.
Go ahead.
If anybody hasn't got the accelerators, then to a certain extent, the same thing can happen with the click tracks and also the EEFs.
Sure.
We both know it's possible, maybe even common, for other things to spring to mind as a consequence of using them either during or just after. I deliberately built it into the accelerators more so than in the other tracks.
And I thank you for that. Because by the way, and you had said before, you'd think you wouldn't be, I think you said surprised or whatever. I'm not surprised when it happens anymore, but I am excited every time it does. It's really cool. It makes things so much easier. All right, testing. So let's say you've gone back to these most recent memory in the holidays in our example. You've click-tracked that. You feel the memory's feeling really good. 0, it's all Jeep, that kind of aspect. You've also had a couple memories that came up. You click-track those. They're really neutral. In fact, some of them even fade away a bit. I had a comment recently by someone. They go, "Man, I can't. The memory is it's like far away, and I can't even really grab onto it anymore. It's a slippery thing now." Now you might think, well, okay, the holidays were here. Now I got to wait a whole year maybe to test this out. Not necessarily. Test it in your mind. You don't have to go back to the same people, same time, same place. Test it in your mind. Imagine the same circumstances occur later in the future. So yes, it's in the future, but bring it to the present and try really hard to feel stressed. Don't be afraid to try to get upset. Try really hard. And then ask yourself, how would I respond? And what I mean by that is, how would I respond subconsciously? What kind of feelings come up if they do? And what other thoughts? And see, how would I respond to this situation? And just, I'll give you an example. I just worked with somebody recently about feelings about mother. And the thought that came up wasn't any more anger and those kind of things, but compassion came through. And the response was, well, she really had a difficult time for some reason. She's really in pain inside herself and just was not able to express love for whatever reason. She did the best she could, but she just couldn't really do a real wonderful expression of love. In fact, just the opposite. And, I feel really sorry for her that she's still in so much pain. So a shift, observe that. Observe your responses. And another one to add on, when you are in Jeep and you feel that peace come over you, revel in it, swim in it, enjoy it, get used to it and send your subconscious a signal that says, this is what I want. In fact, how can it be better than this? How can I make more of this? Any comments, Tim?
Well, yeah, the one thing that springs to mind is that the more you're able to do that, the more it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Jeep is possible as a habit, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, I think my subconscious looks for it. My subconscious looks for things to create Jeep, to be able to revel in it itself, with me, in harmony with me. When you and I were talking over the phone with Beth was sitting here. This was a few weeks ago. She and I looked at each other when you and I were discussing some things, and I said to her, yeah, we as a couple, we really haven't had any mean people the past few years. They just don't show up anymore. That's not what we're looking for. That's not what our subconscious is looking for. It's rather interesting. It's fascinating, and it is a lot of fun. Okay, here we are to the Jeep slide. This is more on testing. So I guess the question is, are you still neutral about it? When you go and really delve into this old recent scenario at the holidays with distress, really jump in there. And are you still neutral about it? Maybe some Jeep coming through at least. So if you are feeling Jeep, and you just can't conjure up that stress anymore, this is a great time to move on to PSTEC Positive. Right, Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. And also to give yourself a pat on the back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's great.
Yeah, I always tell people I appreciate your click tracking, because every time you do, you don't just affect your own life, which is wonderful, but you do affect other people's lives. It does make a difference in this world. I have a question that popped here relevant to this, so I think is a good time to ask this. Is it absolutely essential to eradicate every last trace of negative feelings before it's appropriate to use PSTEC Positive? What do you think, Tim?
Was that for me, Jeff?
Sure.
The answer is the answer absolutely is no.
Right.
Quite when to use PSTEC Positive is a bit of a slippery subject.
True.
It's a simple question, but not with the simplest of answers. Okay, on the basic guidance and the soundest way to go about it in a very sort of straightforwardly put way is to clear the emotional stuff before you start using PSTEC Positive.
Right.
But there are ways to use PSTEC Positive which are useful in terms of clearing things, and I think it's PSTEC Positive Secrets. I think I talk about this and sort of go into it in some detail. If you want the fuller answer than this, get a copy of PSTEC Positive Secrets. But suppose you seem to be stuck in some way, and click tracking something removed those feelings temporarily, and then they sort of came back, and then you click track it and they disappear, and then they come back. That's a clue that what you also need to be doing is looking at beliefs.
Right.
And doing it almost in reverse, because those feelings are coming back for a reason. The reason is almost certainly going to relate to a belief, and under those circumstances, then what you would want to do is to identify the belief or beliefs which make you feel that way, and do something about them with PSTEC Positive. And that's one of the reasons why I produced that tutorial, because it's not always straightforward.
True.
Yes, as a general rule, to clear the emotion, and not all the negative emotions, because you can spend a lifetime doing that because things are constantly coming at us. But suppose you were clearing emotions that were related to, Uncle George, who perhaps hasn't been on his best behaviour when it comes to the holiday season in the past. You would clear the stuff to do with Uncle George, or the things that have habitually made you feel bad or unhappy about it, or cross, angry, whatever it is, and then you can use PSTEC Positive on Uncle George. While you're also still doing clearance on other things. So it's not a case of, always use the click tracks and similar tools to do the clearance and then go in with a whole load of PSTEC Positives. You can, you can break things down into smaller chunks and deal with Uncle George on a click track basis, and then go in with PSTEC Positive to create either beliefs about him which are going to be helpful in terms of the way you feel about him in future, or alternatively to affect your behaviour towards Uncle George, which might mean that he behaves a little bit better in the future. I mean, there's lots and lots of different ways you can use it. Is it possible, Jeff, to find out whether that's just about covered it?
That's what I was going to ask, yeah. Does that answer your question, Nafia? Does that make sense? Just let me know. The other thing I wanted to add to that, Tim, was you can become obsessed about, clearing everything first, and that's not what we're talking about here.
No.
And that's what I'm saying. This is much easier than everybody's thinking. A lot of people are thinking. Just click track the things that come up. And that's basically what we're saying here. If you focus on that recent holiday issue and some other memories come up, fine, click track those. You don't have to go looking for them. You just, if they come up, click track them till they're 0-1. Now move on. That's all you have to do.
Something
really.
else.
Go ahead. Yes.
I was going to say, Jeff, there's something else here as well, which is quite important. And I know we've said this before. What we're talking about here, to a certain extent, what I've talked about in some of the tutorials, is, it's to be taken as a guide. Yeah. It's not hard and fast rules.
Right.
Rules tend to fence people in.
Yeah.
So treat whatever advice or suggestions we give as being guidance and not rules.
Yeah. Yeah, we really encourage you to explore your inner self, your awareness, all those kind of things with these tools, and that's what they're meant to do. I also wanted to emphasize, though, we talked about accelerating your results with the accelerators, and I want to emphasize that one more time before we go to PSTEC Positive, because a lot of people, though, want to jump to PSTEC Positive thinking that'll automatically accelerate their results, and not necessarily. And that's why I think a first step, I don't want to call it a first step, but a guideline toward a first step is, if you really do want to accelerate things, and most people do, invest in the accelerators. That's going to move you along much more quickly than trying to jump ahead to PSTEC Positive without handling the emotions. And
yeah, that's a very, very good point, Jeff.
Yeah, so I think that's the best first step for accelerating. PSTEC Positive then would be kind of a second step in a way. And it's, again, just
actually, the other thing that...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing that's really important about the accelerators, if somebody does have them, is to... and this came up on one of your interviews, I remember, it was quite a long time ago, was that they were using the tapping accelerators because that was work, but not the relaxation, the sort of relaxational one.
Right.
Because, I'm not working, I can't be making progress. Absolutely not the case. They're there for a reason. The relaxational ones are designed to do a different job from the tapping accelerators. Their job purely is to be there to help someone unwind if they've, maybe just had a stressful day. They can't be bothered to click track anything or to do any work. If they use those, they are absolutely jam-packed with suggestions which are designed to subsequently speed progress with every other PSTEC track of any kind which that person uses. So, even if it's like last thing at night, and you put a relaxational accelerator on, the result will be beneficial in terms of the speed of subsequent outcomes, or also the profoundness. And so that they are worth using. Like I say, if somebody's got the accelerators, that don't ignore the relaxational ones. They took me quite a while to put together. I did that for a reason. So don't dismiss them just because there's no work involved.
Great point, and absolutely. When you do pick up the PSTEC tools, do be sure that you get familiar with all of them and integrate most of them. I'm not going to say all of them necessarily, but really play with them and find what works for you. I think that's most important, but don't discard something because of a label like, oh, it's a relaxation one, I don't need that. Because Tim's definitions of, say, a relaxation track is probably a little different than your idea of what relaxation is, in a way. So...
because it might be consciously relaxing,
exactly.
But at the same time, the subconscious might be doing quite a lot of work in the background.
There you go.
Which it does because of what's in the tracks.
So Nafia said for that question, great, thank you. And you're always welcome, Nafia. No problem. Yeah, Mike just commented, I've seen the relaxation one get amazing results. Mike, can you expand on that? And you can do it verbally if you want me to unmute you. Do you have a moment? Let me know. While he's responding, so just kind of to summarize and wrap it up a little bit on that, no, you don't have to lower the emotions or eliminate them all, but it does really help to lower them quite often, so you can segue into use of PSTEC Positive. They just work much more cleanly and effectively when the emotions are lowered. So that's just a recommendation there. Here, I'm going to unmute Mike for a moment, Tim. Is that okay here? You ready? Hi, Mike. Are you there?
Hi, Jeff. Is that coming through?
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
I just find it fascinating when you're talking about the accelerators. I've been using, with my last 5-6 clients, the relaxation accelerator with terrific results. And the amount of recall that's coming back from early childhood is just, well, you couldn't put it into words. And that's coming back without a massive amount of emotion to it. There is a number there, and then we just click track it. And it's, to me, it's like the first trigger point to where it's all stemmed from.
So how do you use this specifically in session, or what are you doing? What's the process?
Well, I see people one-to-one, and that's the way I've been working for quite a while now, especially with the children at school. But I usually do the main click tracks on session 1, and people are usually astounded then. And before they go, I use the accelerator and explain to them why I'm using it.
Okay, all right.
And usually by the next session, there's a lot more results come through that they're going to discuss with me.
Okay, so you actually run the relaxation in session at the end, true?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And then you find in the next subsequent sessions a lot more of the stuff they need to clear comes up, true?
Well, the one I had yesterday was she remembered being locked in the cupboard by her father at 3-year-old, and prior to that session she had no conscious memory, and it brought back a little bit of emotion, so it was linked to the main thing that we worked on.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, we appreciate that tip. Any question, comment from Tim? Tim, do you have anything on that?
No, I mean, the only thing I was going to say was it's actually quite unusual. I think I admire Mike for doing that because it's not the way that most people work in sessions, as far as I can tell.
Right.
But it's absolutely a great way to go about doing things.
Very good.
So it's very nice of Mike to share that.
I appreciate you sharing that, Mike. Do you have any other comment or question while I have you on?
No, I'm going back mainly into my own work, which I've done lots of psychotherapy work over the years. So I found the accelerator very similar to use a good trigger point for other areas, because you might be working on a specific phobia, fear, levels of anxiety, and sometimes you can't get a conscious reply to where it started from, and the accelerator certainly brings them back. And then you get hold of that and you can destroy it totally.
Very good. Good. Well, thanks a lot for sharing, Mike. I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. Okay. All right, so let's move on to PSTEC Positive and what we have, kind of the next part of this. I mean, this goes along with what we talked about in session 2. Craft your PSTEC positive statement. You can review session 2 of this workshop, use some of those positive statements, or you can craft your own, or you can take those statements and tweak them a little, depending upon the situation. If you're not sure, then just use them as, like Tim provided in session 2. So use that statement several times with PSTEC Positive, or PSTEC Positive Extra Power, actually, is that's what I'm using now mostly, pretty much primarily is PSTEC Positive Extra Power, and I use PSTEC Positive Extra Power on almost a daily basis with certain things that I'm doing. So with your kind of stress focus issue, craft your statement, use it over the next few days, once a day, twice a day, whatever you have time for. see how you feel about moving in the direction of that positive statement. So like the examples Tim gave, not specifically, but about Uncle George, if there's a PSTEC positive statement about how you're going to, feel or work or respond to Uncle George when he gets a little unruly during the holidays or other times, see if that really feels true for you. If that's like, yeah, I feel like a confidence level, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, pretty high. Then, now, if the future event is quite far off, I would revisit this positive statement periodically before the event. Let's say the event's a few weeks off or even months. Put a reminder on your calendar, whatever, review that. Maybe, after you do it several times and you're feeling very confident about it, revisit maybe once every week or two or something like that. Just kind of test it in your mind. Try really hard to get upset again when Uncle George does his deal. Now, if stress comes up, that's okay. Just click track it. That's fine. And I wanted to make this point on that because in Nafia's question about do I need to get all the emotions down to zero before I do PSTEC positive, and of course the answer is no, not necessarily. Sometimes the reaction when you do your PSTEC positive and you start working with it, sometimes an emotion does come up. You know what? No big deal. Just that emotion and maybe a memory comes up, whatever it is, click track that emotion. And then go back to your PSTEC positive once that emotion goes down. One of the purposes I use PSTEC positive with myself and others is I use it to encourage the subconscious to give us and present to us the emotional issues that are in the way of that suggestion. So if it comes up again, click track the memories, the imagined events, whatever comes up with the stress. Anything to add to that, Tim?
Yeah, well, I suppose so. One of the things about PSTEC positive is it's because it's sort of completely multi-use is that it doesn't necessarily have to relate to anything to do with emotions, and as we're sort of steering away from the holiday stress thing here a bit, but it might be interesting for people to know. Our daughter's 7 years old, and she uses PSTEC positive on her own.
Oh, really? On her own? On her own, by herself?
Yeah. Well, basically, and that was just what I was going to say, Jeff, and she's found it very, very useful. Oh. Basically, what I've done is I've given her one or two fairly standard suggestions of the kind that, sort of structure that we talked about in the earlier webinar that, they're in the handouts. So I basically came up with a very, very simple PSTEC positive statement that could be used for almost anything as long as you change the bit on the end. And I gave a practice of using PSTEC positive. The second one, which is the one where you imagine taking a journey as you do it, and she's now got to the point where she just does that, so she doesn't need to have the track playing. She imagines taking the journey, follows the instructions on that second track. She finds it really, really useful. She uses it for all sorts.
Very good.
Obviously, if a 7-year-old can do it in values, it's probably going to be beneficial for other people. But the great thing about the second version of PSTEC positive, and also PSTEC positive extra power, because you can do the same with that, is that after a while, and it needn't be too long, as long as you follow the same instructions, you get used to the process. You can use it under any circumstances. And that's why I taught it to her, because it's a useful thing to know.
Very good. Here's the bottom line, and this comes down to choice. If the subconscious is still presenting memories and emotions to you, then there is something within your mind model, something within your idea of reality that is in conflict with your desire to experience that. It could be peace, or it could be joy, excitement, etc. Anything that's cheap. That's okay, again. The subconscious tends to present it to us, I believe, in chunks that are doable, that are reasonable. And it doesn't tend to do it all at once. And I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways. So, and again, this is just the way I operate is if anything comes up that's non-Jeep, I click track it. That's a fundamental. And it's a real fundamental here in the Hawaiian culture with the bowl of light, the light of their inspiration, their amakua, their higher self, all that kind of thing. And the thought is the pohaku, or the stones, get stuck in the bowl and they block the light, all that goodness at Jeep. And so a real practice with those that follow it are huli the bowl or dump the bowl, get rid of the stones. And if you, and I know Tim put together the click tracks and made them free for that reason, if all you did was use free click tracks and just kept dumping out your emotional non-Jeep feelings and, the anger and the guilt and the sadness and all the frustration and those kind of things, I mean, there's a lot you could do just with that, because that light tends to shine through and you feel good about things and you make different decisions. So to me, it becomes a choice of, all right, I'm presented with these emotions that come up and these limiting thoughts. My choice is I can shift it, release emotions or shift the belief, or not. That's the choice. One or the other, and it's up to you. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. And I'm always full of admiration when I hear you talk about this, because I think for most people there's a reticence to sort of clear anything that isn't Jeep. I don't know why, because it doesn't take very long, but it's a absolutely wonderful way to go about it. It really is. But you know that from personal experience, don't you?
Absolutely.
But it's like I think it's this sort of similar to this thing about getting down to a 5 and going, well, that feels much better, and just wanting to stop at that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it's, I've worked with 2 people privately this past few weeks that I can think of just off the top of my head right now. And in both situations, and I've had this before, the peace would come through to them, a feeling of peace, just, feeling of being at ease. And they were very uncomfortable with it because it was so unfamiliar, to the point of almost feeling like, okay, this is wrong, or this is not good, or scary. Interesting. So there's all sorts of non-logical reasons, which you talked about at length, non-logical reasons for the subconscious to tell you that something may be good or not good. And at some point, that's where you have to take your conscious will and go, okay, wait, subconscious, dude, girl, wait a minute, we're doing things a little different here. We're going to let go of this, and we're going to enjoy this peace part. And so it's part of the exploration. But I can understand why people have that resistance. But if you do get stuck, we've got so many ways that you can get some free suggestions. The forum, is a great place. And there's so many tools and tutorials now, click tracks made simple or free, that answer a lot of these questions, some of the ones we've covered here again. So take advantage of all of those.
And the interviews, Jeff.
And the interviews, yeah. I mean, we have some free webinars as well. Yeah.
There's some absolutely amazing stuff in those interviews.
Yeah. All right.
That's really, really important.
Choice. So it's worth the effort to keep using these types of opportunities, like this stress thing. If you still have some stress after the holidays and you worked on it, it doesn't mean you were a failure at all. It means you cleared some things and there's just a little bit more to do. Keep clearing and cleaning, and use the click tracks. And also keep suggesting to your subconscious what you desire through PSTEC Positive. That's what it's there for, to make those suggestions. If the subconscious disagrees with you, it'll let you know, and it'll let you know why. And you just have to clear up that misunderstanding. All right. By the way, you're worth the effort and time as well. You're worth it. There's no question about that. And it's not about changing who you are. It's about discovering the truth of who you are. That's at least my opinion on that. So make that choice because, again, you're worth it. The time, if there's money involved, and with most PSTEC tools, it's not that much. But sometimes you still feel stuck. You're also worth the investment to hire a professional that can help you guide through this. People like Mike Wells that we just talked with a few minutes ago here, that can help guide you to finding peace through the use of these tools. So take advantage of the PSTEC register. It's up on the screen there, but if you can't see it, it's PSTEC. That's Paul, Sam, Tango, Echo, Charlie. Register, just like it sounds, .org. PSTEC register altogether .org. And you can scan through there, find some people that are a person that you feel comfortable with, and give it a try. Sometimes all it takes is one meeting with a person to get an aha, to get an understanding. And sometimes it's not so much that you didn't know what to click track on, but that maybe sometimes people are click tracking incorrectly despite all the tutorials. That's okay. You get a little, get some hints there and some suggestions and some great ahas, and it's all worth it. You're worth it. Anything else to add on there about the register, Tim? About working with a professional?
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to say there's a couple of things. I actually talked about it on PSTEC Level 1. It was one of the first things that I wanted to get across to anybody, is that the most important thing you can possibly invest in is yourself. It staggers me how people are, that they'll invest in practically anything other than themselves, some people, for whatever reason, and I don't really understand it. It is truly bizarre. It's like, doing a training course or something like that. Some people are very reluctant to educate themselves any further. They leave school, don't educate themselves any further, and limit their possibilities. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's worth investing, because it does. If it's doing the work, that is an investment purely of time and practically nothing else. If somebody's not making headway, and I think this is a really, really important point to make, Jeff, if somebody isn't making progress, then the best thing to do is to get advice, because it's counterproductive to use the tools in the wrong way. If somebody, and we've had this, because occasionally, an email will come and say, I've been doing this for the last 2 months and I'm not seeing the results that everybody else seems to be getting, and we ask them and they're doing it completely the wrong way. Yeah. But what they've actually done, because they've slogged away doing it their own way for whatever reason, is they've actually sort of shot themselves in the foot. And very often it's purely because they don't want to spend any money at all asking someone like Mike, who, incidentally, if anybody's listening, is a brilliant therapist. I don't know whether he's doing phone therapy, but he certainly should be. Talk to somebody like Mike and get advice, because it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it in terms of the potential benefit and the amount of time that could be saved, the profoundness of the result. The therapists who are using percussive suggestion all the time know their way around it. And if somebody's coming to it from cold, yes, there's all the tutorials and so forth, but there's nothing like asking questions and getting an answer from somebody who really knows. Absolutely. We're very, very fortunate. We've got a register with some truly wonderful therapists on it now.
Absolutely.
I probably said enough, but
it's okay.
Don't get stuck. Don't stay bogged down. If you've got questions, get answers.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't stand by the answers that every therapist on the register is going to give you, because everybody comes from different backgrounds and so forth. But for the most part, as long as they're using percussive suggestion on a regular basis, they'll be able to give you good, solid advice.
Very good. I had a comment here from Assumpta, and I want to ask Assumpta if you'd like to verbally tell us about your experience with stress in the moment, or do you just want me to share it with everyone for you? You can raise your hand if you want, or give me a comment. Let me know. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so I wanted to also... Okay, I'll share it with him. Assumpta wrote here, I use stress in the moment, PSTEC for stress in the moment, a few times. And I had an interaction with someone who often hooks me in. I like that phrasing. It feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? Someone hooks you in, and it's almost like you can't help yourself, and suddenly you're in it with them. And then later on you're thinking, I always love that. Later on you go, oh, I should have done this or said this. Anyway, something goes on to say, after I used PSTEC for stress in the moment, this person had a go at me, and I responded with humor. Big change. So thank you very much. You're welcome, Assumpta. And thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. All right. We've come to the end here, basically, of this 3-session, although unless we have any final questions. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free, take them on, whatever you might have. I think within these 3 sessions we've covered a lot, and not just for stress over the holidays, and also not just for stress, not just for stress issues. I mean, for almost any issues, you can follow these processes in the same way and just change what you're focusing on and those kind of aspects. But for those that joined us late here, etc., we'll have a handout here on the 3rd session as well. That's going to be available on the same web page, so be sure to visit that, where you'll find the video replays if you want to listen again, PDF handouts, Q&A areas there. If you want to ask more questions that come up later, feel free. There's still some Q&A there. And we also have some optional PSTEC tools that are listed in there, like PSTEC for stress in the moment. So go to pstechaudiosource.org/stress. That's pstechaudiosource.org/STRESS, stress. And you'll find everything there. Okay. Do you have any final comments, questions, Tim, on this?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Or anybody else? Me. Final comments. Yes. It's actually something about stress in the moment, and it might be a good idea to explain one of the aspects to it which haven't ever been, we haven't discussed, and that is a sort of habituation thing. People tend to follow patterns, and this is one of the reasons why I've been absolutely hammering away at stress in the moment, because it's great to be able to click track things that you have in the past and things that you know about in the future, but the unexpected things, the things that just crop up, it's great if you've got like a squelch, an instant squelch. And the reason why I've been using it on a regular basis is because if somebody, if you find yourself in a situation which would be stressful, and you start to go, it's like, ooh, like that, there's like a, it starts to climb. What stress at the moment does is it'll squelch it. You get a squelch and it just goes like that, and it collapses it. And there are 2 aspects to it. If anybody hasn't listened to it, there are 2 aspects to it. You've got sort of like a manual control, so you can consciously do something, and then it does the squelch for you. But it's also designed to do that automatically. The benefit of doing that climb, so it hit the stress and then there's an instant squelch, is that because we are creatures of habit and the brain does things in a habitual way, is that over time what will happen is that a stress on the way and then the squelch will become habitual, and so it will become completely automatic long term, which is the reason why I'm using it extensively, because it's sort of similar, and I was explaining this to a therapist yesterday, it's sort of similar to something, it's an NLP technique which nobody seems to have heard of, called the physiology of excellence, which basically it's about change. Sorry?
Yeah, I've heard of that. Go ahead. Sorry.
You've heard of that?
Yeah.
Well, you're quite unusual. You must be very well read, because when I've mentioned it to people, they've gone, what?
Yeah, I think I've seen a video. I have a video maybe still. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, the
physiology of excellence is basically it's about creating a new pattern.
Yeah.
And that's my plan with listening to Stress in the Moment on a regular basis, and I'm listening to it every single day, compounding these suggestions. It is because what I want is to get to a point where as soon as stress kicks in, there's an instant squelch, and once I stop using Stress in the Moment, I'll do so once I'm absolutely convinced that is now habitual.
Right.
The idea being that it will give me a lifetime pretty much stress-free, where, if something happens, I just stay calm. And so that's why I'm doing it.
I wanted to mention that because I had an email from a friend of mine that was working with PSTEC for Stress in the Moment. And she kind of jumped into it right away, which is fine. But I think she also had some emotions that were still kind of high, and those were coming up afterwards. So she was, I believe, trying to skip, again, when we talked about this earlier today here on this webinar, trying to skip having to deal with the emotions. And a lot of us are in that situation where you may be, okay, I just want relief. And again, and it's emphasized in the package, be sure you click track emotions that are really high, right, before you go into that. What's your comment on that, Tim?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, all of these tools are designed to do certain jobs. And so, yes, if somebody's got a whole load of baggage and emotional baggage to deal with, that needs to be dealt with first. Not first, but as well.
As well, yeah, good idea.
For optimal results, yeah.
Well, I think like in this case, her emotions came up, I said, okay, take those emotions, anything that's coming up with it, memory, otherwise, click track it, and then go back to Stress in the Moment and use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And one of the other things that there was an email came in where somebody said, "Oh, I love it. It's just so relaxing." Yes, it is. It's meant to be. It's meant to be relaxing to listen to, but it goes way beyond that. It's designed to. With hypnosis, there's something called a post-hypnotic suggestion, which is something that anybody who's used to hypnotherapy or knows anything about hypnosis will know about. There are basically two ways that you can use suggestion if somebody's in a hypnotic state. And this is obviously nothing to do with PSTEC. But you can give somebody a suggestion about the way things are now, or you can also give them a suggestion about what they will do under a certain circumstance, or what will happen, and that's called a post-hypnotic suggestion. And it's basically it's an instruction which is issued to the subconscious, which says, when this happens, this is what you need to do. And so PSTEC Stress in the Moment it's designed to do that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You couldn't just use that and nothing else.
Right.
If there's a whole load of stuff that needed to be dealt with, it would either have to be done first, or maybe alongside. But and it is there in the introduction.
I have one more question here, and then we'll wrap up. From Anita. Hello, Anita. She said, I too have heard of physiology of excellence. Don't remember exactly what it was, though. All right. Her question, though, was...
Still better than most people.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we got quite a nice crowd, actually, then. Is PSTEC in the moment a click track?
Well, you're probably best to answer that, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Well, no. Okay, there we go. Let's move on. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah. Anita, no, it's actually a hypnotic track that basically you relax through it. You don't really need to focus on much, but you do listen in a relaxed mode
and follow the instructions. Yeah.
And yeah, but it's not so you're not tapping or clicking or focusing on like a stressful issue or anything like that. No. And so, and you don't have to craft a PSTEC positive or do anything like that. It's all right in there for you. Just follow the instructions, like you said.
Yeah, and it sounds simple, but it's probably the most sophisticated thing that I've produced. Or I know you vocalized it, Jeff. You did a wonderful job. But it sounds very simple, but it is incredibly sophisticated. And that, like I said, that's why I'm using it.
But it's simple for the user, yeah?
Sorry, easy for the user.
But
I do all the work.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure people weren't saying, it's complex. I don't want.
Yeah, I've been thinking about how to do that for years. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of. So I would recommend everybody try that if they haven't.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I know it popped up because when we started mapping out this webinar series, that's kind of when it came up, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was you that was a trigger to action, Jeff.
Yeah.
Because you said, look, we need this.
Yeah, well, that's what the request was.
I've been thinking about it for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there were a lot of requests for, how do I handle it in the moment when it pops up, and what do I do? I worked on it, but it's still, then I get there and it's popping up. Well, this is the answer for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, finally.
Well, I appreciate everybody that's attended. Appreciate all your contributions. Everybody's questions that have come online and offline, everyone that's listening to the recording, I appreciate that. I also appreciate mahalo nui loa to all of you that are using your PSTEC tools that are doing your work, because the work you do is, again, for you, of course, and you're worth the time, the effort, and sometimes some of the money that you might have to do when you have to hire someone to maybe help you through and guide you a little bit. But I also appreciate it because of the effect it'll have on other people, on the world, if you will, okay? So I appreciate everybody coming through. I have a lot of thank yous coming through here from a lot of people, so I'm not going to read them all, but for everybody that's saying thank you, you're very, very welcome. Tim and I both appreciate all that you put in to your work, all of the support that you do to PSTEC, and for joining us on this little 3-session webinar. And feel free to share it with anybody as it is so far, and tell other people about it. If it's been helpful for you, it can be helpful for them. Any last goodbyes, Jeff? Tim, before I do?
No, I'd just like to say thank you as well. Actually, I do have one quick question, because I didn't know when I mentioned Mike in Morecambe. Does he do phone sessions or not? If he's still on, can we find out?
Hey, Mike, can you type it in real quick, or raise your hand if you... question mark. Okay, I don't know what that means.
No.
Hold on, let me... Oh, he didn't hear you. What's your question again? Sorry. Go ahead. Say it
I
again,
just
Tim.
wondered whether Mike does. I'm not sure whether Mike does phone sessions. That's all. It'll be useful for me to know in future.
Yes, he does. Mike
He
Wells.
does.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I did an interview with Mike, so you can find that on the interview section as well. We did it on back pain. Yeah, that was a fun one. And thank you again for doing that, Mike. All right, without further ado, let's wrap this up. Thank you again, everybody. Take good care. Keep clicking. Aloha nui loa.